So I think TikTok can be a little biased too, because the other day I tried posting something and it took it down.
What?
Yeah. So
What?
you know that TikTok trend about like no piece of artwork has ever affected me. And then
No,
it has
because I
the
don't know the trends because I know. But you'll tell me about it. Yes, I know. I don't.
well, and I think also I'm on like, the art side of TikTok, so maybe I get things that maybe the rest of I
Yeah.
don't know. This is the side of TikTok I'm on, I don't think you're on.
No, I'm not on art TikTok. Although I
Okay.
wouldn't be mad about it.
Yeah.
I'm just
Oh,
not there.
so
Anyway,
there's
so okay.
this TikTok trend that I love, actually. And so have you seen the TikTok trend with the Mariana Cross song? Mariana. I can't sing. So,
Um,
okay. So I think it's funny that, like, when you realize that you're on, like, you think something is a TikTok trend, and is it? It's
I
just
think
you.
no, it probably is a trend. I just like we discussed, I'm not on art TikTok.
Yeah.
And I don't
I,
and I'm older than you. Like we don't
there's there's not that big of a gap. But okay, so anyhow, here's the trend. There's this song, and there's a shift in the song that goes with, so at the beginning of it, you know say, well, no piece of art has ever affected me, and then after the song shifts, then it shows like, the devastating piece of art that totally like guts you, and then the shift
okay.
in music kind of matches that. Okay, so it's powerful,
Okay. I
and
yeah, I can
and
see
I
you're
like
good at
that.
those. I can see you doing something like that.
It's
I
really, emotional,
right.
artful, right? As a zebra, I had one in mind. And I had something I really wanted to post, but it got taken down for nudity,
What?
which so we will I'm so worried that I'm going to lose my TikTok account because I've had like a couple community violations. And so we'll link the piece of art here. One of the things I've struggled with as a zebra was feeling like I've lost a part of my identity due to my struggles to integrate my disability into my identity and practice as a visual artist. Uh, Literally losing, you know, the the physical abilities in my hands, but also like losing the inspiration, the energy, the creative aspects of like wanting to do something beyond just get through the day. So my biggest hypermobility hack is don't lose yourself, because I did, and now it's a struggle. Anyhow, many visual artists have affected me being a creative person. I went to art school, in case you all don't know. But Frida Kahlo has been really special to me because of her multiracial background
Yep.
and
Struggles.
um, her struggles with disability. She also, as I've gone through life, I've spent a lifetime obsessing over and studying Frida, and kind of facing my own reckoning with disability is why I posted one of her paintings. She has many very powerful paintings to do with disability. But the painting from 1944, La Columna Rota, or the Broken Column. If you don't know her history, basically, she did that have some
It's an
disabilities.
accident, right?
She had a, when she was a young woman in school, actually, she was in a devastating trolley accident. It affected her spine, her pelvis, her ability to bear children. Just, it was a very devastating accident.
And that happened when she was pretty young, right? You said?
Yeah, yeah, a young teenager. And
Gosh.
she spent most of her formative years after that, in a bed, in casts. And then her whole life was defined by her medical treatments. And but she rose above it in some of the most amazing ways, particularly in her expression of her life and her body of work. But when going through a challenge like a serious health condition, we tend to leave behind a piece of ourselves. And what I love about Frida Kahlo is that when she was immobilized after the accident in a like basically almost a full body cast, that's when her family gave her paints and she painted on her cast.
Oh.
And so she, at her lowest, is when she found her power. And it's also where she found meaning. So she transmuted all of that pain and suffering, both emotional and physical, into a body of work that we still feel and see today. So it's just such a
That's
powerful thing to me.
yeah.
So we tend to lose a bit of ourselves, our identities in this journey. You may not be a painter that doesn't paint any longer like me, but reflect on which part of your broken core self, your wild little child you, the things that you're passionate about, your identity. What part of you have you like forsaken or left behind on this journey? Because those are the things that we forget about that we shouldn't be. So Frida once said, I'm not sick, I'm not broken, but I'm happy to be alive as long as I can paint. So that is one key thing that will help you face the next part of your life as you go through this. Part of this journey is not giving up on yourself.
Yeah.
But there are some practical things and some steps you can take to help you face these challenges. So that leads us into let's talk about ways you can accommodate yourself.
Okay, accommodations. I'm assuming you're not talking about a stay at the Hilton. So
I mean,
let's
if you need to stay at the hotel to get away from all, that could be one, but
right.
I mean something a little different.
Okay, so what are these accommodations?
So accommodations are reasonable adjustments that can help you to address these barriers that we've talked about. The only control you truly have in any challenge in life is your approach and your attitude, your how you maintain your inner and outer self, right?
Yeah.
We can't really change those external things alone on our own. I could go off on a whole tangent about how the collective should rise up and stand up for disabled people, but I'm going to put that over here for a minute. We can't change systems of oppression or other individuals. This is discouraging and hard to accept, and you can go through a whole existential crisis like I have, but don't.
So so I think you're a little farther ahead and actually actively thinking about accommodations for yourself. So can you give us some ideas about how you accommodate yourself and your baby zebra, like the challenges you face?
So, Shelly, I'm going to be honest with you. That's why I'm further ahead because I watched my child go through a devastating progression into um, being severely affected by symptoms associated with what we now um, are based in our Ehlers-Danlos syndrome diagnosis. And of course, I'm glad to have that talk. That's why we're here today, and in general, why we have this podcast.
Yeah.
So prepare yourself. This is going to be long. I am going to talk a lot and give a lot of information.
Okay,
Um,
get your notebooks. You
yeah,
have lots of them laying around. They have pages available. Fill them in.
and even though, like, yeah, we have a podcast and we're sitting here talking to you, I don't like to listen to myself just drone on and on. So, Shelly, if you have something to add, interrupt, okay?
Okay,
Like,
I'll do my like interjecting
okay,
humor thing. I'll do that.
okay.
Okay, cool.
So, my first hacking hypermobility life hack for accommodating yourself is fight the first fire. What do I mean? Take a step back, see what is the immediate need. Many of us feel overwhelmed, right? Like there's too much going on. So keep a literal list, write down a list of your health goals, periodically check in, list all the tasks, all the things you got to do, because that's where your mind is sitting in the spin of overwhelm. I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this. Okay, spit it out, write it down. Even if like you don't
Where
even come back to that list.
Okay, where do you write it? Where do you keep this list? Because I
Um,
would start a list and then I would lose the list. So like
so I'm gonna
where?
honest. I have notebooks and stuff, but
Right.
I do not use paper except to vomit out feelings or if I need to write down something real quick. For something like this, I organize my thoughts electronically just because that's what works for me. I have a cute little spreadsheet, and by cute, I mean terrifying. I have like a tab that's like my health priorities currently at this point in my life, my health priorities for this doctor visit. I have a list of all my pediatric symptoms. I have a list of all my adult symptoms. I have a health history of all of my diagnoses, my parents' health history, my grandparents, and then I have one of these spreadsheets for my child too.
That's
Like I said,
amazing
it's
and a
terrifying.
lot.
Yeah,
How long
you
did
don't have
it
to
take
go
you
that far
to
overboard.
but how long did you how when did you start that? Like, it sounds like you got a pretty good system. Like, how long did it take you to actually decide that that was a system that was gonna work for you? Because I think that's where I'm at now. Like, I used to have, like, a bunch of paper, and then I took a big, long
In
break from
general,
getting
I
sick.
switched from paper to like electronic organization years and years ago, like
Okay,
probably before most people were doing that, because that was how I learned how to accommodate my neurodivergence.
okay.
I also like I would if I didn't, I would have piles of paper and accumulate, and I just wouldn't
And then
go
that
through
would
it. I
just
would be
stress you out.
organized.
Yeah.
But that's, like even if I don't come back to this like list every month or whatever, it's still there. Like I can go retrieve it. I don't have to hunt through piles of papers.
Oh, you know where the list is then.
I just have a folder of like, and we'll talk about this.
Okay.
I have a folder of like medical things. So like I have my thoughts, my medical records, you know,
All right.
the
I
kids
I
that
need to
were.
make my thing a bigger. I've had a bunch of smaller things that get
So I use that method for other things in life too, for like, I don't know, other types of goal planning or whatever. Um, so
I I've
when I
never
sit back,
planned a goal.
well, so
That's not true. I'm sorry, but
So that's the thing though. We're really hard on ourselves sometimes, and it's not as hard as we make it out to be. Sometimes it really is just writing it down. Like you don't have to have a whole darn plan every single time. Sometimes it's just giving it the words.
I okay, so take a this is where I struggle because I am not a rough draft person. And
I
so
am not.
I know you're not. And so like I'm just in awe of the fact that you can like do that because I can't I don't want to do something unless it's like perfection, which is that I don't
I let go of
I
that.
have all
Especially
I
with this. Yeah.
so that's I just need to get I'm getting closer to that. I'm not
And
quite
also
there yet with this.
because of my problems with perfection, one of the things that I was like, oh, well, if I just dump everything in this electronic folder and I use a large name electronic company to do this that's
One of our
known for its
overlords.
amazing search engines, all I got to
Yes.
do is be like, oh, I remember I wrote this down. Let me go search it up. And it magically finds it. I don't have to have a
I
fancy finding
know.
system. I don't have to lug stuff around. It's just there.
Yeah, I think I did move to a lot of digital, but then I just ended up with a lot of digital clutter then. So I think I need to like think
And I'm okay with
more.
that because I would rather it be digital clutter than in my life clutter.
Yeah,
Does
that's
that make sense?
fair. Oh,
Um,
100%. That's why I have a Kindle and not I still like books and I still keep a few
yeah.
books
And
that
so
like
I still read. I mean, like, I'm always just so like I still read books and
right.
still have paper and like that's how I process things. Speaking of processing, like I process by writing things out. So
Yeah, me
sometimes I
too.
do, if it's got some emotion tied to it, do need to like handwrite it, but then I put it into like that. But so like we should maybe talk about this offline sometime, Shelly, why
Yeah.
you okay, I should probably identify and organize my thoughts and my goals. Why am I not doing that? So is it, and that's where I was. I was like,
Yeah, what's the barrier to that?
But whatever I had let go, I'm like, well, that was just wasn't a priority for me. Like I had these big career goal plans, I had big weight loss goal plans. And eventually I was like, wait a minute. I sat down and I like thought through what are my life priorities, and those things just weren't it. It was my health, it was my family, it was my personal growth. So like when I realized, okay, well, these are the things that are actually important to me, yeah, then it wasn't so hard to dedicate some effort into things that aren't inherently easy for me to do into those things because they matter to me. Anyhow,
Okay.
so we'll
Mm,
talk about that
okay.
later.
Yeah.
I'm not going to psychoanalyze you in our podcast.
I mean,
I have some avoidant tendencies too. It's fine. But the other thing is that maybe a sense of overwhelm that Shelly's feeling. Like she's probably overwhelmed with all the
yeah.
things, right? It's a lot. So like that's what I'm talking about. Sit down, get it all out, and then once you have like this vomit, you can like pull out the pieces and realize, okay, well, these are my priorities. So now I can work out a priority list and I can move things around and I can figure out, okay, well, I'm going to tackle one thing at a time. What is the top thing right now? And as you go through this, you know, how she's expressing, some frustration with this idea, it may help to have a support system in that. And that's one of the great things I love about our little community is we're starting to realize that sometimes some of us have energy or talents in different ways that we may not have energy or talents. So
Yeah.
find an informal way of getting support, like a buddy system, a support system. Rely on a trusted friend or family member that's aware of, your point and your symptoms. They can help keep you on task. They can help organize you or fill in the gaps in things that are a struggle for you. Is it hard for you to call and make appointments? Do you need
Yeah.
emotional support? Do you need communication support? Do you need them to be your voice? Do you need them to even track your symptoms? Do you need them to help bring you down and ground you? Um, my partner is not an organized person, but he is a very pragmatic and grounded person who can very easily redirect my emotions and struggles with things.
Okay.
So,
My husband's good at that too.
um, you can even enlist the help of a formal medical support system. So if the idea of you being in charge of this yourself is terrifying and you don't have that informal support system, you may not be aware, but there are formal patient advocacy and medical support systems in place. You can request in most facilities what they call a patient advocate, and they help patients with complex cases or who maybe have disabilities or mental health challenges and that can't organize and prioritize their
Okay.
care or advocate for themselves on their own. Um,
Is
and a
that
lot of
covered by
people,
insurance?
so a lot of times that's just something a hospital will provide. Um,
Oh, wow.
Additionally, some health insurances, they may not advertise it, but they actually provide a care coordinator for complex patients. Many of them do. Just call and ask. And
Okay.
so I did
Employ
not know that we had this as a benefit in our health insurance plan until my daughter started getting a lot of diagnoses and they reached out to me. And it's an RN, so it's a nurse who helps you manage complex care. And they helped us research providers make phone calls, find covered hospitals to complete, order tests, imaging, certain
wow.
types of specialists. A lot of times they work with like complex patients or certain diagnoses that are in the best interest of insurance companies to manage things like diabetes, COPD, mental health
Gotcha.
issues, just things that, so it's a mutually beneficial arrangement, but you just may not even be aware that that exists.
My husband's employer actually, it's not the insurance carrier, it's his employer
Your employer,
benefit,
yeah. Yeah.
and they have a patient advocate type person, and so I need to just get with that person, and I just haven't because that's a phone call I don't wanna make, and my husband will make the phone call for me, he does do those things, he's just been so busy, and
Also,
I don't have the full bleh. Anyway, we'll get there. It's
also, you
a
maybe
lot.
sometimes, or maybe this is just a me thing, is it sometimes hard to ask for help?
Yes, because it goes back to that alexithymia thing where you can't explain very well, so it's
Or
easier for me to
you explain it away.
either for me to suffer as I had been, or just try to figure it out myself, or just suffer until I figure out how to describe it.
So
So sometimes
that's a
it
good
takes a
point.
long time.
So we're working through some kind of emotional blockages. So my next point is feel your darn feelings. Like allow that to happen.
I don't want to.
Me neither. But I'm getting past that. I'm working on it. I'm actively always working on it. Mental health support from a therapist that is both trauma informed, aware of neurodivergencies if you are something like ADHD or autistic, and chronic illness aware is really helpful. They don't have to be all those things. Many therapists can adapt to treating different kinds of patients and
Yeah, I
different
feel like if they're
people,
gonna
but
be adaptable to the groups you just mentioned, any one of those, they would be
yeah,
adaptable to
yeah,
all of them.
you may have to, kind of experiment to find your person. Also, you you may need to find people that are like you because the reality of it is if you have a rare disorder, it's unlikely that there's people around you in your life that really can truly empathize and understand and walk in your shoes with you. So find a community with similar disabilities, even virtual. That actually is why we do what we are doing. And that was one of the biggest things that helped me get through this journey as a mother with a sick child and find answers, suggestions with coping, paths to take, recommendations for providers. I also there's all sorts of aspects to that. A big part of that is just not feeling alone. Interestingly, I have found there is this organization that created the Autism Healthcare Accommodations tool, and there's a website where you can go and it can create a customized accommodations report for individuals to give to their healthcare providers. It includes things that may make your healthcare uh, easier, but both before, during, and after your visits to like a primary care provider. And it's you go through and you take a survey, gives you some needs and ways to ask for accommodations. So
What?
the
That's cool. I
I
had
know.
not heard of that. So we'll be putting a link up to
Yep, we'll
that.
put a link in here. So this is the Aspire Healthcare Toolkit. It was created as an ongoing research project by the Academic Autistic Spectrum Partnership in Research and Education, the Aspire group, to help improve healthcare access and quality for adults on the autism spectrum. The project is funded by the National Institute of Mental Health and is a grant recipient award for this tool and the whole group. The website there, I've used it a couple times. It's very helpful. Even if you're not on autism spectrum, maybe check it out. It may give you some ideas. So the next thing that I, recommend, my hack, is the thing that Shelly and I both we kind of mentioned we don't like to do. Start tracking your symptoms because
Yep.
that pattern and the systemic nature of your issues won't be identified by your provider or providers until you can really provide maybe a better, clearer, full picture. So
Yep.
track your symptoms in the ways that are accessible and make sense to you and capture the full aspect of its effect on your life. So journaling and tracking, on paper or like in a spreadsheet, like my crazy self, may be hard to do with someone like ADHD. Maybe do a video diary.
I do that. I started a playlist on my TikTok of symptom tracking, mostly just new symptoms.
So she's
Just
killing two birds with one stone. She's
yeah.
keeping track of her own symptoms, but also maybe helping you, our
Yeah.
viewer. It's okay if you can't do this every day. My kitty is saying hi. I apologize for
Oh,
that.
hi,
That's one
kitty.
of my coping things. That's one of my support animals. But it's okay if you don't have the energy to do this every day. It's
Yeah.
about overall consistency and being able to just get a good enough picture to articulate it when you need to when you're seeking care. Don't forget to include the feelings associated with the symptoms. Let it all out. Use it for your own processing because we struggle with processing. Go ahead. Two birds, one stone. So there are some easy health trackers that you can do electronically, like in a smartphone or a watch to help keep track of some basic vitals. Even when I was like really struggling with, I didn't know what was going on with my crazy heart rate drops and dizziness. I used a smartwatch, and that's when I realized blood pressures really are this low all the time. Like, what's going on? And then I had that. It wasn't just me saying, like, I get dizzy really easily. And they're like,
Right.
okay. The next part in this is health care requires a lot of effort and ongoing effort when you are facing a chronic issue or a systemic problem that affects multiple body parts because you have a lot of moving parts and pieces, different doctors. So manage the logistics of your healthcare journey in a supportive way that looks at both life balance and efficiency. Okay. So like make it easier on yourself, but also give yourself a little bit of grace. So think about pacing. Don't just like go full bore and schedule every single appointment that you possibly can in 1 month. You are going to burn yourself out
That
unless
is
you're
good.
traveling and you have the opportunity to go to a place that has all the specialists and maybe, yeah, kill yourself to go do it in a span of like 3 days.
And the other unless is right now we're kind of in a you take what you can get with
Yeah.
appointment situation. And
Yeah.
so I've in the last few weeks I've had now I also have something going on that we haven't quite figured out, but in the last few weeks I've had so many things just like this, and it is
Yeah.
exhausting.
And
But I
I've,
also have to like
I've had a lot
take
too.
take what I
And
can
then
get.
you,
And I hate it, but it's like
and then you
I
have
have to
to,
do it.
yeah, you have to balance. Like, should I put this off or should I go ahead and
Yeah.
go do this? But so even given kind of those access issues, you can still kind of pace things.
Yeah.
Like, being in physical therapy, I can, look at the schedule and try to plan things out. When I go to care, it requires a little bit of a drive for me. So I do tend to try to combine appointments so that I take less time off work and I disrupt our day, like in her school day, a little bit less. Make sure your tasks align with your goals. Like, what are you most focused on right now? Right. And trying to consolidate care into one hospital system is a really good hack too, if you can do that. It may not always be possible because of the limited amount of specialists in certain areas, but it will help streamline, referrals to certain specialists, get you in the door quicker sometimes. It makes communication easier. A lot of times, you can, if you're in one hospital system for most of your care, the communication to your doctors would be easier through their apps, but also between specialists and your primary care doctor. They're going to see, each other's notes and records very easily. Even though there are electronic health systems, I still recommend you request and keep all of your medical records in a central place. So
It's a great idea.
they they do sometimes go missing, records. And even in the modern world, in the electronic world, health system programs get updated. They buy a new one. So your records from 5 years ago that you once saw in an app may not be there. So get them. Request and keep all of your medical records in a central place. Designate a file folder, a bin, a binder, whatever it is that works for you. I do digital, so I have a digital folder.
Do
But
you have any
anything that is paper, I just have like a bin and I just throw it all in there. I don't organize it. I just put it in as it happens.
do you have any
That's it.
suggestions for imaging that's on
Yes.
outdated media?
Okay. So yes. So most of the imaging, when you request the records, you can request both the format of the image as well as a printout. Get both.
Okay.
And then just go ahead and hold on to the whatever media it is, like if it's a DVD, CD, whatever. A lot of the imaging centers still can read older things.
I would hope so. I
Yeah.
mean,
So see if your doctor participates in a health sharing platform. There are some pushes now that help link separate electronic health systems with permissions if you opt into that. So
nice.
see if your hospital system has something like that. And that way you can link different doctors and stuff. Use the secret resources to
Secret
help coordinate your
resources.
care.
Well, how do you find out about these secret resources?
Ask. So
Oh,
there
ask for
are,
help?
yeah, ask your doctor's office or hospital system if they have any resources for complex patients and care management. They might.
Okay.
Ask your nurse, your care manager, or your social worker at your doctor's office. Oftentimes, in a primary care practice, they will have a social worker on staff, and they are really good at helping those things,
Okay.
with those things. Take some extra steps that you may not think of. So call ahead, talk to your doctor's RN, your registered nurse, and review the goals for the visit, prep any concerns, accommodations you may need. Ask about your doctor's particular comfort or experience with your particular issue, or what you think might be the problem, the symptoms that you're having. Be proactive and take charge of your care. Don't just wait. If your doctor says, hey, you're going to need to do this, don't just wait for that specialist to call you. Like, get that phone number, you call them. You're in charge, not the doctors. Call and
That's a good
message if you,
reminder.
yeah, call and message if you're waiting on results and haven't heard from them. Don't just wait.
I'm really bad at that.
Don't just wait. You can take charge and initiate. Now sometimes, are you going to be tired and exhausted and you don't feel like doing it? Heck yeah. But that's when we can enlist help, right? It's okay to ask for help. So if you do need certain accommodations for when you have a visit, like you need a support person there, there's lots of different accommodations you may need, like written instructions, that sort of thing. You can call ahead and request those things. I would recommend not just to like the administrative staff that's like scheduling appointments and that sort of thing, but actual with someone on the clinical side of things, like the RN that assists that doctor practice. Be
Okay.
open about your needs and limitations. So prep some talking points, because a lot of us have a little anxiety about making those phone calls. So just
Yeah.
jot down some ideas, explain like, hey, I have this physical disability, I have a learning disability, I have ADHD, I have autism. So some examples would be, you could say, hey, I'm in recovery, so please don't give me any narcotic painkillers, but I do wish to discuss ideas to manage these particular pains I'm having at this next point. Another example is, I have PTSD from sexual trauma, so please let me know if you're going to touch me and talk me through whatever procedures you're going to do.
Oh, that's great. I hadn't thought of that.
Okay. Number 3 example, I'm overwhelmed with my healthcare. Can you introduce me to an advocate for help? Number 4, I've struggled with my weight emotionally. Please allow me to be weighed without discussion or seeing the scale if you need to weigh me.
I just actually went through that myself. I actually didn't say anything when they weighed me. I just decided I just had my back to the scale
Just
and got on, and then
you
nobody
just
said
use
it.
the nonverbal communication.
Because I
That's
just
okay.
didn't. And so here's another thing I'm gonna, after you say your next point, I have something I want to add to it because I do. So
Mhm.
anyway,
Um, for me and my daughter, doctor's office visits are overwhelming because of the sensory experience. So I have said or have called ahead and said, I am autistic, or she is, and overwhelmed by the bright lights, loud noise, and struggle with communication. So please allow me to meet with the doctor for discussion away from loud noise and lights with a support person to help me with communication. And I would like any advice or next steps in writing. Here's another one. I
that's great.
struggle. You want to interrupt there? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say, like, I recently just realized I could like bring up the fact that the fluorescent lights were bright, like too bright. And so,
Yeah.
but I'm still struggling to actually like identify myself as autistic with
As out
some
yourself? I don't.
people. Well, the
Yeah.
reason why is because I just sometimes the response I get is they're like,
No, you're not.
oh, or you don't look like whatever. I just don't. So what I have just taken
Or
to
just
doing,
confusion.
yeah. So what I did, but like when the lights were too bright, like I just was, and I was just kind of be like, oh, I'm really like I just like to have
Oh, I
them
have a
actually
migraine.
see, yeah, how they actually like see me
So,
affected rather than
so if
if
you're
I were
unwilling
to
to
use
unmask,
sometimes, but like
you,
I instead of
you
me
can,
being like,
there's
I am
workarounds.
autistic, please blah blah. Like because then they'll just look at me and be like, but if I'm like, oh, this light, then they're like,
So you
oh.
are okay to say, I am overwhelmed by bright lights and then explain it. You don't have to justify it that far.
But see, that's me just working on my inner thing is I'm so used to having to explain why I do every single thing.
I
And so
also
I
do not
I
help
start
myself all the time.
well, so I just start explaining things initially because I'm prepared and expecting pushback. And
So
that's
one
the
of the
thing I
best
need to
things
work
you can
through.
do is just prep that explanation so that one, you don't over explain, or two, you're confident in that request.
Like prep it in reply
Like finger,
or
like
prep it like say it
script
first.
yourself. Like every
Okay.
other autistic person, do you not have scripts that you follow that you've said in the mirror before you go somewhere?
Um,
You'll use that technique.
Not
Go ahead, script
really.
it. No?
I'm good at winging things, except
Okay.
for when I'm not. See?
Um,
Like I'm
yeah.
really like a lot of times I wing things, people don't know it. But when I'm
Oh
bad
yeah,
at
me
wing,
too. I wing most of
but
life.
when I'm bad at it is when it's very obvious.
I
Anyway.
I I wing a lot too, so I get it. But I also script a lot of conversation. Anyhow, so speaking of that, I struggle with telephone conversations. So please message me on your secure messaging system instead.
That's when I need.
Okay. And then this one, I struggle with.
Ooh.
I have difficulty walking. I'm going to a very large hospital system. I have to walk 3 blocks. The parking's over here. Can you please help me find transportation or valet parking planning before my appointment and tell me exactly where I need to be dropped off so I'm not lost or overwhelmed or
Oh, there's
physically
nothing more
exhausted?
overwhelming than like parking at a big complex with buildings and not
I can't
knowing.
tell you how many times I have been in like full autistic meltdown, but also in a POTS episode by the time I made it to an appointment because
Oh
I
my
didn't take
gosh.
care of these things for myself.
Yeah.
And then do you think that appointment goes well?
Oh no,
No,
that's like a
because I'm
terrible appointment.
like my brain is not functioning. Yeah. And then all they're concerned about is how high my blood pressure is. And I'm like, no, usually it's
You
really
d
low. I'm just
Yeah,
stressed
here's
out
what you
right
don't
now.
understand.
Okay, so all these things, we're talking about like being really transparent and asking for accommodation. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, and if it doesn't always work, because sometimes that does
Yep.
not always work, direct communication and accommodation as a disabled person is not always feasible. Game the system. Okay. Don't be shamed from doing research and preparing. These approaches will help you. Okay. It'll let you maximize the small amount of time you have with the doctor. But don't come in with like a conspiracy nut job binder without first gauging a doctor's receptiveness. So
Yeah,
some
yeah.
doctors don't like to be educated by their patients, but prepare yourself. So look up and understand the diagnostic process, testing, and procedures for what you suspect this particular issue is. In general, right now we're talking about the hypermobility diagnosis. So, be prepared, have that information, bring notes and a list of your demands, your goals, like we talked about. Be prepared with summary points, key questions, and concerns to help you and your doctor stay on task and accountable to your needs, what your primary goal is for this visit. It's really easy to get, like flustered when you feel dismissed or overstimulated, confused, or emotional, or physically overwhelmed from the long walk.
Yep.
A partner, if they come with you, can help ground you and return you to a task and goal. Don't let that medical appointment be one-sided. The system is that, they're going to tell you what to do. No, This is a partnership. Your doctor was chosen by you for their expertise, but you are the expert on you. You know
Yes.
your body. Be an active listener and engage throughout the
That's so
conversation.
hard for me
It's very
because I'm
difficult for a lot
I'm
of us.
so I'm like,
So
why
it's
that
okay.
poster is out of date. Didn't they know that they
Yeah,
updated that stuff? Like,
take
that's what
notes.
I do in that's why I just bring my husband now,
Yeah. So
and
for
he takes notes.
me, it
I
helps me to stay engaged and not wonder if I'm like able to take notes on what they're saying. And then like politely interject, ask clarifying questions, and then summarize. Okay. So like at the end, say, okay, so this is what I've got from your advice here. These are the tasks that you need to follow up on. These are the changes we're making. This is, like if they're giving you a prescription, yeah, go through your understanding of how and when you should take it, what you should look out for, any advice at the end to ensure like your understanding. We've kind of already touched on this. You are seen as the commodity and consumer in the healthcare system.
yeah,
This is a capitalist healthcare system.
it's a
It
for
runs
profit.
on money.
Yep,
Even if you are in a system that's like managed care or you're on disability or state funded welfare programs. You are still part of a for profit healthcare system tied up in money.
yep,
So shop for your care and know your rights. Okay. Doctor shopping is not a bad thing. That means you're an informed consumer. If you feel dismissed or unsupported, it is within your rights, like legally, this is in the patient rights and best for your interest, really, to
when you
find a
say
doctor.
patient rights, is that federal?
Yes, that's for
State?
the federal laws. Yeah,
Okay,
and some states have things like that too.
right,
It is in your best interest for you to find a doctor that will provide and give you the care that you deserve, right? If you're paying for it, pay for what you're paying for.
yeah,
There are lists of doctors that are aware of and have treated connective tissue disorder patients, EDS patients, for example, on the EDS Society website. There are lists of queer friendly and gender affirming providers. There are lists of size friendly providers. Get word of mouth recommendations. Talk
yeah,
to a doctor or specialist that you trust. Ask other zebras. Go to those local online support groups. Don't just settle for a doctor. I mean, settle for a man if you must, but not a doctor, okay?
yeah.
Um, don't settle for an answer or a treatment that doesn't sit right with you. Like if you're
Yeah,
feeling a
trust your
little
gut.
iffy about something, there's a reason, right? Okay. Sometimes things are just uncomfortable because of change or difference, but learn to kind of trust where your intuition is taking you. It
Yep.
is okay to ask for a second opinion, and you have the right to complain, and you should formally complain
That's so hard for
using the
me, the "and you should" part.
questionnaires, writing to a hospital, publicly online in reviews. Complain. If you are mistreated, complain. That's the only way other people know. That's the only way we can
I
hold
have
people
been
accountable in the healthcare system.
groomed to be quiet and not complain about stuff, so it's
So,
very or when I do finally complain, you get a dissertation, and then you also get, like
or the pat response,
uh,
yeah. But
but then you also get, like, all these recommendations on, "Here's how all of the ways you should have fixed it," and then they're like, "Why didn't you tell
victim
me this
blaming,
years ago?"
let
I'm
them
like,
kind of okay. So
anyway,
we can either make excuses or we can en masse speak up for ourselves.
okay.
Because that's okay. So you know what? When feedback is given, it is not always like going to be taken seriously until it starts being a pattern, right? So like if a
Okay.
doctor that we think of, oh, they're a great doctor, gets like one complaint, we'll think, oh, okay, well maybe they had a bad interaction that one day. But if a particular doctor gets 10 complaints a week, we're going to start to think, oh, wait, something's going on here, right? But if no one's
Yeah.
providing feedback, we have no idea how to manage any business
I
or healthcare
guess
system.
from my perspective, it's I don't I feel like I just send it out into the ether and it doesn't matter,
It
you know?
does.
And that's not to say that I necessarily want someone to call me after I
And you
submit that.
probably
Please,
can't, because the truth of the matter is they're not going
I
to say,
should.
hey, I counseled my employee. They're probably just going to apologize and give you some like generic response. But the truth of the matter is that feedback allows for improvement
But
internally.
I, yeah, if that happens. But I guess you're right. There's no harm in putting it out there. I guess
Um, I think you're going to have to
this is where the jaded
take a
side of me
leap
comes
and take
in.
the leap where I do and trust that in general, most people in healthcare really do care about humans. There are they're not always good eggs, and there are people that don't always take the best approach every day, and there's burnout people, and there's a lot of problems in healthcare, trust me.
Oh, yeah.
But in general, most of the people that are involved in your care, even administratively, they genuinely care about other people. They would not put up with the insanity that is healthcare.
Oh,
They didn't.
I mean, I care about people and I didn't go into healthcare. So
Smart move. Smart move.
one of,
Um,
I make those sometimes.
and healthcare is different now. Just gonna say
Oh,
that.
oh.
So have some patience with your healthcare providers too. We're all a little bit traumatized. Anyhow, another controversial opinion: wear your mask. Wear the darn mask.
Well, yeah, germs.
No, not that mask. Not this one. This one.
Oh,
Um, I mean your mask that hides the severity of your level of neurodivergence and or disability.
but if
But use
you're
it
masked,
strategically. So
okay,
what do I mean?
that's yeah,
So find a
clear.
balance. So find a balance. So mask to the socially acceptable level of disability and experience to be taken seriously. Okay. So it's not always safe to unmask, particularly if you're a marginalized group or a certain color in this country. Now, we're just going to be honest with you and say that we are not the only voices you should be listening to on this topic. We're white presenting women, particularly if you're more marginalized than us. We fully acknowledge we have certain privileges. Even as disabled people, we have pretty privilege. I mean, it, it's it's a it's a thing to
It's
be a white woman of an acceptable level of attractiveness. Um,
or even
and
an above
also,
level, above
yeah,
average. I'm just kidding. That is a joke.
we neither one of
My
us think
hus-
that.
my
That's a bad joke. Um, we also have a long-standing experience of masking neurodivergent traits because we went most of our life not being diagnosed or fully diagnosed. So seek the support of your own community of marginalization. Okay. So don't just listen to me if you're a person of color. Okay.
yeah,
But we're going to mention it because it affects how we are perceived as patients and how we receive healthcare. You can still say fuck the patriarchy and then embrace the patriarchy's rules. Be aware of
yeah,
it. You don't have to condone it. Mitigate the bias in the way you present yourself in
yeah.
healthcare.
If you want any kind of care, you're gonna have to dance with the devil.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, you know what I said it earlier, and I'm not going to go off on the tangent. Yeah, systemic change is needed in this country and in healthcare, but you still have to live in this system, and you still need care, and you still need help right now. There's ableism, there's sexism, there's racism, there's classism. I could go on, and some of them are much more damning than others. I acknowledge that. But there are things we can kind of do to game the system. So you can dress and present your image in a way that gets you taken more seriously, but still reflective of your abilities and health. Look just sick enough, but pretty enough. Look just intelligent enough and speak just intelligent enough to show that you're somewhat educated, and be prepared enough, be emotionally, mentally stable enough, be casual enough to be comfortable, but be respectable. Think like a capitalist, because ultimately, what did I say? We are the commodity. Treat yourself
Right.
not as a person in that moment, but as the commodity that needs repaired. What's in it to society if they help fix me? right? To get the care you have to be valued as a commodity worthy of fixing, separate your emotional experience with medicine on the outside. Even though we're trying to integrate those feelings and emotions and struggles that we have with our healthcare experiences.
So I'm going to interject here and just here's something that I'm going to put out there as just something for you to be mindful of, depending on where you are in this process. If you are, I don't know where I'd characterize myself in this process. I feel like I'm kind of I don't want to say mid, whatever. I've known about it for a bit and I've done some work, but I've still got some work to do. So I'm kind of whatever.
Same.
Um, I have started tearing down the barrier between my mind and body connection. Okay. And so I'm just warning any of you out there, if you have not done that yet, when you start doing that, it's great that you're doing that because you're becoming one with yourself. And I fully support that. Just be aware. Once you open those floodgates, they're open. Okay. So the lights are always going to be brighter after that. People are going to be more peoply. They're going to be
You
so
will have a
peoply.
dark night of the soul.
You are going, yes. So, and you don't want to shut that back off. So that is why, and also it's probably why I never thought of making these calls ahead because I had desensitized myself so much to them in the past when I was going to the doctor. But now I'm not. Now I'm tearing down those walls. And now when I go to the doctor, I'm like, oh, holy shit, I'm going to die with these lights. That lady's pen is scratching. I can hear Janice talking about her keto diet in the back. And she's also
It's
making some
so it's
appointment
not
calls.
easy.
No, like it's
That's
so
why I
like,
said what I said. This is going to be controversial. That's why. Because it is not easy once you've started supporting yourself and unmasking certain things to put that mask on. And I'm asking you, okay, well, mask harder now to get
yeah,
what you need. It's a little bit manipulative too. And that gives me the ick. It gives a lot of us the ick.
yeah. Actually, part of the whole reason that started my burnout into this whole thing with my pain was I really kind of just one day when I had that break after my that family event I went to, I was like, how can I be this person, but also like true to myself? And I was just like, I can't,
And
and then I was like in bed for 3 days.
And Shelly and I have both been through what is labeled as autistic burnout, you know, as we start to integrate certain aspects of being a disabled person. It's a struggle, it's an ongoing struggle. So when you then have to kind of take a step back, even for a moment, even just for an appointment, or you need to be in tune enough with yourself to gauge that fine line of like, okay, well, I'm going to mask because I'm meeting this new doctor for the first time, and then I can gauge how to respond accordingly. I
Right.
have doctors and providers that I don't mask with, but that's because I've developed
A
a
rapport.
relationship with
Like
them. Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
you've got that comfort level.
Right. So the point of this is, you know, framing our experience more effectively with context, not just drop like, okay, well, I feel like this or kind of vague things, but
Yeah.
you know, you need to go ahead and work the system by explaining how it affects your life. So now that they're listening to you because you've masked a little bit, go ahead and tell them very specifically, this is the outcome and this is the expected disability outcome tied to capitalism.
Yep.
Even if, you know, maybe deep down they don't really agree with those things. That's how things get done. That's how medical care and any sort of accommodation or
They need
treatment
to be able to measure an
rolled out.
outcome.
Yeah.
They need to be able
To
to find
measure,
an
it's
outcome.
always specific and measurable. Okay.
Yeah. So like for
Um,
me, it was like I drop things. Well, they don't care. Well, I've dropped things and I can't grip things so much that I've actually cut myself trying to prepare dinner and I've dropped hot plates of food and I can't prepare meals for myself or
right.
my family.
Right. So
Oh,
do my
that's a
doctors,
problem.
yeah. So do my doctors care that I drop pitchers of water or that I can't paint anymore? No. Do they care that I'm missing work because I can't feel my hands to do my job?
Yeah.
where I contribute to society in
Yeah.
healthcare.
Yeah, because
Yes, they do.
honestly, even cooking dinner for your family is not as
Yeah,
important
who cares? Right,
as yeah,
right,
as being a worker.
right. Yes, exactly. So in this, we've got a lot of feelings, right? Like we're kind of even holding back right now. Trust me.
I am impressed at how measured I am. I have not shed a tear.
Usually Shelly and I cry when we talk about hard things on our podcast, or just not on the podcast, just, in
Yeah.
general. Because we have started to integrate these things, those we're starting to let out these feelings, right? And that's a good thing, but you're going to have to learn as you integrate those things to practice very controlled emotional management and regulation with your medical professionals and your doctors. Your experience may be off-putting to a doctor, to the nurses, to the staff. And I say may, and let me clarify. I've seen it be off-putting. I've
How
heard
so?
from
Yeah.
other patients that we are dismissed because of how maybe severely we present and how crazy we appear. There are whole forums
So you
on Reddit dedicated to calling out illness fakers, and a lot of them are medical professionals. Not all nurses, not all doctors believe all their patients. Okay, so
ooh.
your
I don't really go on Reddit.
I don't either much, but I was told about it and I went and I saw it and I will never go back to that. My point is how we express ourselves, being differently abled in our body and minds, may be difficult for neurotypical and able-bodied people to relate to. Also, there's some desensitization and other issues related to being in a traumatic healthcare environment and healthcare burnout and post-pandemic world. I could go on and on. There's interesting dynamics at play here. But if you can manage to kind of regulate your emotions, even when it's emotional, for your healthcare appointments related to seeking your EDS diagnosis, you will probably be taken more seriously. This is why things like support and therapy are so vital. Reframing those emotions that will disconnect you with your provider or cause you to be viewed in a negative way in therapy or support before you bring those hard, challenging emotions into an exam room. Okay. That's not the place to like let it all out.
Yeah, I've done that a few times.
Yeah.
It didn't go well.
Because, sometimes honestly, like we do feel desperate to have answers.
Yeah.
We feel like we would do anything to be free from the pain. We have high expectations. We've built it all up in our heads. Like this is going to be the visit where like I get some answers. I finally get diagnosed. I finally get some help, some helpful suggestions. You might feel defiant because you've been disbelieved. You might be angry, like genuinely angry.
That's usually me. I'm usually like the angry, defensive, and then I
And then sometimes it turns more inward, like you're anxious and defensive and you've built up a wall, like we have to prove ourselves. And
Mhm.
you just may not have clarity on what's quote normal or whatever. So take that to therapy. Okay. Take the rational stuff to your doctor.